Right, well, can I echo Maisie's thanks to you for coming today? So what I want to do is give you an overview of EPSRC in a UKRI world, discuss our delivery plan, the structure of it, and some of the themes of funding that we are going to engage with over the next 12 to 24 months, and then update you on some of the new things that are happening within EPSRC. So hopefully this is going to get everybody on the same page in terms of UKRI and EPSRC, and also tell you something about the new way we're working within our own organisation. So just to put that in terms of the sort of basic elements of the talk, what has changed? So really that's just what does UKRI and EPSRC look like? Talk about the delivery plan, the organisation, and the opportunities that come with that reorganisation and working within a UKRI world. And they are substantial, I think, and hopefully you do too. So I'm sure that almost everyone in this audience knows the basic structure of what UKRI and the component councils is. But just so that we are all on the same page here, we have at the top of the tree the Treasury, putting money into the science base, and I mean science in a Paul Nurse use of the word science right across all the research councils. Going into the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which I'll refer to as BEIS. That money then comes down to UK Research and Innovation, which one thinks of as an umbrella organisation, and in particular, the board of UKRI. And the final allocations through to the councils will then come through from the UKRI board in this brave new world. Okay? The 9 component councils are the 7 research councils and Research England and Innovate UK. So if you look at that diagram, the big change here is, from a working perspective, is that it is very much easier for research councils, and indeed councils in the broadest sense, to be able to work together. This is not a cosmetic change. The executive chairs of all 9 councils meet every Wednesday between 9 and 10 in the morning. If you can't be there in person, which you're encouraged to do, you Zoom in on the off chance that the software works. But you dial in or you web link in. And what this means in practice is it's not an opportunity just to drink coffee. In fact, no coffee is served. It is hard work. It does mean that if you have ideas about what you want to do and you want to drive initiatives, the executive chairs are there. They are meeting on a weekly basis in addition to other meetings where they work with one another. And it makes things much easier to put in place and deliver. Of course, this does not mean that we did not work across councils before. There was a huge amount of that activity in the EPSRC portfolio, but the ease with which it's done, and I'll touch on that in our reorganisation as well, it has been greatly enhanced by the creation of UKRI. And now it's a matter of identifying how our community can best engage with those opportunities. And of course, not forgetting the core EPSRC community, the physical sciences and engineering community. So it's not now that everything has to be cross-council. We are here to look after the engineering and physical sciences base in equal measure. And obviously very happy to take any questions you have on that and how it actually works. So the delivery plan, I'm sure you read it last night. It's under your pillow. An exciting document that it is, but hopefully you came away thinking that we had a vision and that we were really trying to do things going forward as an organisation. But what I want to do here is not go through the delivery plan page by page. You'll be glad to know. I want to put it in context. And the context, of course, is that EPSRC is one of 9 councils. And if you did look on the website for the delivery plans of UKRI, you will have seen that there are the 9 council plans and then a 10th plan of UKRI. And that accounts for some of the way in which topics are presented there. In particular, the sort of essential platforms that work across UKRI, which I will touch on, are therefore more lightly touched on in our own delivery plan because they're seen as cross-council activities. So if I just go through this now, the context of the delivery plan, that's EPSRC's delivery plan is what we are going to do. Then, to put this in context, from UKRI, there are additional funds, and I'm going to give you the language which I will refer to. EPSRC's spend I will refer to as our baseline allocation or our core allocation. And that comes through to EPSRC, and we can spend it as we wish. And that's really what the delivery plan is describing. On top of that are what I call the UKRI funds. And particularly, we're referring here, this is a world of acronyms. It's the merry world of acronyms. The National Productivity Investment Fund, which is commonly referred to as NPIF. The bits of NPIF that you are probably more aware of are the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund and the Strategic Priorities Fund. So the ISCF and the SPF. And you will have heard of the Talent and Skills Agenda. Future Leaders Fellows comes out of that. Then there's the Strength in Places Fund, the SIPF. That's run out of Research England, and the Fund for International Collaboration. So those monies come in, and the EPSRC community can win funds from those, and they are in addition to what sits in our baseline. Okay? Another difference now, and I've referred to them already, are what we call the UKRI cross-cutting themes, because it becomes obvious, if you think of it, that all councils, there are going to be certain generic issues which are important to all of us. And I'll pick on the most obvious of these to me is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Agenda, the ED&I. And so I think very sensibly, the idea is that where you have an obvious cross-cutting theme, you don't have ownership of it by one of the 9 councils, but an executive chair from one of the 9 councils takes an oversight of how policy is developed for the implementation of ED&I in consultation, I'm taking ED&I as the case, with the partner councils, recognizing that you will need bespoke activity for the different communities represented by those councils. And we have Alison Wall here who will be taking questions on this. But we have the expert within EPSRC who's able to answer any of those questions if you have them. But I think that that's a really easy one to explain because it's something that's very high up on everyone's agenda at the moment. So yes, there's a central policy because what you don't want is ad hoc initiatives coming out from different councils, which then another council thinks, well, golly, if I implemented that, this is not going to work. So we don't want unfortunate precedents being set with all goodwill. We want to discuss it, have a core mission in something like ED&I, and then bespoke elements to it. So if I just go through the cross-cutting themes, EPSRC has the oversight of working with Innovate UK and Research England to look at the commercialisation of university research. So really what that's looking at is how do we interface Research Council research, funded research, through to Research England and Innovate. And obviously that's a big topic. Many meetings going on the subject at the moment, and very happy to answer questions on what we're trying to do there. MRC has been responsible for the Future Leaders Fellows, which is part of the NPIF Talent and Skills, so that when your universities or your companies have submitted applications into Future Leaders, you didn't think of that as an MRC initiative. It was a UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship. But MRC were the delivery agent, you can think of it, of the Future Leaders programme. Then I've touched on ESRC's role with ED&I. STFC, as you might imagine, are having oversight of infrastructure, and that includes e-infrastructure. NERC are beginning to look at the grants funding service and new ways of dealing with grant applications and grant submissions and grants processing across UKRI. Innovate UK is delivering the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, and AHRC have oversight of international. So that if any of you come through with particularly challenging questions on Brexit-related matters, for example, if it's not, the answer's not sitting on the UKRO website, what we would do is refer your question through to Andrew Thompson, who's the exec chair of AHRC, and he will then give you the UKRI response to it and the current thinking. Again, so the same message is going out across all the councils. And then the third element here, many of you will be aware of and have engaged with the Global Challenges Research Fund as another source of funds to our community. A technical failure. Where should I be pointing it? I've tried most directions. Ah, right. I think that's the next one. Okay, so I think I had a manual intervention from the back. Right, so the vision here. What is the vision? It's in the delivery plan. To make the UK recognised as the place where the most creative researchers can deliver world-leading engineering and physical sciences research. We are fundamentally a research council. We're funding TRL, Technology Readiness Level 1 to 3, science, engineering. Okay? That's what we're about. We then want to see that research, that fundamental research, pulled through with our partners and in the ecosystem. And that ecosystem, research ecosystem, has been benefited hugely by the creation of UKRI. So we've got the R&D, so we've got UKRI itself, the R&D base within business, SMEs, government departments, we are closer to them now for discussion, the charities and international partnerships. And as I've said there, to identify and tackle new research challenges and deliver societal and economic impact from our research base. Not all about economic impact. If you get social impact right, I think as many people have said to me, you actually generate the economic impact as well. And then to build on our strong working partnerships with business, and particularly working with Innovate. So we're working quite hard to enhance our working relationships with Innovate to deliver that economic prosperity to the UK, and of course then moving towards the government target of 2.4% of GDP being invested in R&D by 2027. I think we're going to have to do this manually. Yeah. Right. So the priority framework as it is in the delivery plan, a simple graphic, 12 elements to that delivery plan. As you can see here, it's based on what Paul Nurse called in the Nurse Review discovery science, or discovery research. Hence, we've got science and engineering. And then that only works, we can only deliver on that if we've got the foundations right. So that's about working out where to position our investments, having the right research infrastructure in place for our community, getting the right people and the best people into the research base. And then it's not just about outreach, it's about informing the public and getting the public to help inform us how they perceive our actions, what works, what do they respond to well, have they got good ideas. And so it's a dialogue with the public, it's not just about roadshows telling them what exciting science is going on. Once we've got those foundations right, how do we realise the potential of the engineering and physical sciences research community? We're all about promoting excellence. Therefore, we want to be able to help our researchers, our community, become excellent in what they do. We want to join up our research landscape to create impact, and we want to enhance business engagement. And then, if you followed EPSRC's activities over the past years, we have remained talking about the outcomes of our actions in terms of creating a productive, a connected, a healthy, and a resilient nation. That's a very broad base, but we are a very diverse community in terms of what we do. And this really captures all the things that we do. So if I just now touch in some detail, and the examples I'm going to give you are there for a reason, because they illustrate different types of funding, and the way the portfolio fits together. So I'm going to focus on this top level here of productive, connected, healthy, and resilient. If I do that, can you forward it? Thanks. Right, so let's have a look at productive. What I'm doing in each case is taking 3 of the near-term deliverables that we identified in the delivery plan. So if you look at the delivery plan, there are a set of, let's say, 5 or 6 near-term deliverables, which we call 12 to 24 months, and then some longer-term deliverables and visions. Now, 12 to 24 months was not, we couldn't make up our mind whether it was 12 to 24 months. The point is that we are at the end of a delivery, of a spending review cycle, and awaiting the next spending review. And therefore, depending on when money comes in, that determines when we can spin out many of these activities. Okay? So if you take Productive Nation, which is all about catalysing growth, 3 examples here I've just picked on. If you look at the delivery plan and you say, well, that's great, my area just doesn't exist, there was some uniformity imposed on the way we wrote these delivery plans. The lists you see in the delivery plan are not exhaustive. They are simply some of the highlights that we've put in there, okay? So, for example, in manufacturing, investing up to 20 million in projects, networks, and fellowships. Materials, you might wonder why I've picked on materials as a specific theme. One of the things we did notice was that in terms of the NPIF applications, we were not getting the materials community champing at the bit, formulating large grant applications. And I'm going to give you some illustrations of these in a moment. And so one of the things that we thought we would do is focus on the materials community and simply say to them, can you come up with 2 of these large grant applications into Strategic Priorities Fund or an Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, because you don't seem to be thinking big to get access to these pots of money from the UKRI. Does not mean that we think that the materials community needs help, that the discipline is in bad shape, but we've noticed, and others have noticed, that that's the part of our portfolio which are not going in for these big asks. So that's the reason I highlighted that there. And then another example under productive is quantum tech, which is going extremely well. So 2 of our near-term deliverables there were recommissioning the quantum hubs, which has been done, and establishing the National Quantum Computing Centre. And Liam Blackwell, who is an expert on all this, will be part of the Q&A session. So we're in the process now of actually establishing the National Quantum Computing Centre, and that will go on the Harwell campus. So I want to pause here, and this is not because I wish to highlight quantum as a special example. It's a very important and exciting example within our portfolio, but it's the context that I want to draw to your attention, because this is about working in a UKRI world, okay? And in an EPSRC world, this is what we were funding out of our baseline, okay? So we were funding the CDTs, 3 CDTs, National Quantum Computing Centre, and the quantum hubs in quantum comms, computing and simulation, imaging, sensing, and timing. So that's what we have control over. Now, with access to the UKRI NPIF, Strategic Priorities Fund, we have a partnership with STFC, with them leading, which takes our quantum tech and looks at applications of quantum sensors for fundamental physics. And that's typical that the SPF projects are extending our ability to do low TRL fundamental science. It may well have application as well, but the motivation here is to do science. Then we come across here to the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, which supports the translation piece in a way that we didn't have the money to do before. So again, I see this very much as an opportunity. So we've had 2 waves of ISCF money, partnering with many companies, as well as DSTL and GCHQ. Out of that funding has also come the formation of quantum networks, where, for example, we put the Quantum Comms Hub together with Toshiba Research Europe to form a network, and also with BT at Astral Park to form another network. So again, extending what we can do in the basic science domain, but also being able to get the funding to work with partners on the translation piece. And then, of course, a point that we always make, and which you, I think, are always very supportive of us making, is that none of this stuff would be happening if we hadn't been funding excellent scientists back in the 90s on cold atoms and ions, for example. So it is thinking about all the different areas of the EPSRC portfolio and looking at these, what I call landscapes. I'm going to skip across to robotics now. I'm not about to give you a lecture on robotics. This is an example of an Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund project. If you haven't come across these beasts, I'm going to give you a typical format for one of these. So this is one in which EPSRC has a leading role. It brings of order 90 million into the community. And in this case, it's about taking people out of dangerous situations and putting robots in. And the applications here are offshore energy, nuclear, space, and deep mining. So that's the project in a challenge in a nutshell. What I want to focus on is this rather congested middle paragraph, because it's about the basic construction of such a project. Because what you will typically have is some collaborative R&D between users and the universities. So again, that can really quite deeply touch on the basic research that's going on in the area. Then a tranche of money which goes to fast-track innovation projects, just trying ideas out. And then the key characteristic of the challenge, which will be the industrial demonstrator program. So again, it's not just about delivering the demonstrator, it's about forming that community and partnership with business and with other organizations. And this could also be, for example, catapults and catalyst centers. It's about forming the research ecosystem to deliver and translate our science into application. So that's the message there. Connected Nation. 3 examples I'll give you here, just to update you. Artificial intelligence, obviously the flavor of the month. AI means so many different things to different folk, but EPSRC, and in particular our colleague Catherine Magnay, is leading the review of AI across UKRI to come up with an investment strategy to see how we can enable AI to realise its full potential for the UK. Cybersecurity, new centres of cybersecurity research, and also scoping a cybersecurity call focused on reducing cyber attacks on UK businesses and citizens. And then the Turing Fellowships, which are well advanced now, 46 million going into the Turing Fellowships. As many of you may know, about 8.5 million has already been allocated by the Turing Institute. The remainder of that, EPSRC will be launching a competition to bring in fellows, both established AI scientists, leading global AI scientists into the UK, or to retain people in the UK, and then also having some fellowships for essentially career accelerators for the early to mid-career folk. So that's what we're doing there, and we're just going through the final stages of getting the approval to launch that call. So just in terms of context, the monies that are coming in from the UKRI allocation, the NPIF awards, we then have to go back in many cases to BEIS through Treasury to get sign-off of how we are actually going to use that money. So that's very much a changing landscape for my colleagues in EPSRC, because they've got an awful lot more hoops, sensible hoops, but still processes to go through once an award has been announced to release it so that you can then have access to it. Then in this connected area, again, these are illustrative, 2 industrial strategy Challenge Fund activities, one called Audience of the Future, so really about us working with AHRC in particular on AI and its interface to generating the creative businesses and the creative sector, and next generation services. So recognizing that, we can do the tech end of AI, but it's all about getting adoption of AI, getting people to want to feel safe in using it, and particularly looking at how you get buy-in and trust in areas such as accountancy, insurance, and legal services. So that's led by ESRC. So the point here is that we will often be getting quite a lot of funds in for our research community. It's a partnership, and we are very happy for other councils in UKRI to take the lead in those initiatives, depending on what's the driving force in the project. Next. Yeah. And then Strategic Priorities Fund, 2 here, AI and Data Science for Engineering, Health Science and Government. That's a collaboration between ourselves, the Turing, BBSRC, MRC, NERC and STFC, and also interactions with the Home Office and Ministry of Justice. And then securing digital technologies at the periphery. How do you make the Internet of Things trusted when it's actually invading our lives, our homes, our workplace, and our infrastructure? How do you develop trust? Obviously a hugely important area, working with ESRC and AHRC there, as well as DCMS, the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, where of course Tom Rodden, our previous Deputy Exec Chair, is now the CSA. And then finally, Healthy Nation, just 3 of the highlights there, working with MRC to develop, and this is something we will come to the community to talk about, to develop something which we've called the Body Technology Interface, but how can we build on EPSRC skills in sensors, device miniaturization and data science, and interface it to challenges in the MRC world. A program to be co-branded with NIHR on population health challenges, and also one of our own calls, which we're calling Transformative Healthcare for 2050, and that's a 25 million call to research physical interventions to transform community health and care. And then the resilient piece, so I don't think too much to surprise you here, new energy technologies, obviously very important, very broad area. We work closely with the Department for Transport and really looking at decarbonisation in transport. And then the real world resilience challenges theme, as we've called it, fellowship priority areas in decarbonisation and resilient energy systems. So new energy technologies, decarbonisation, really big thematic areas for us in the coming years. Doesn't mean we're not interested in other aspects of resilience, but those are the sort of 2 things which we really are thinking closely about. So let's go up to the next level of the priority framework. And I'm just going to talk in detail about 2 of these areas. Realising excellence in people, we're going to carry on with the schemes we already have in that space. But one area we are going to particularly push, and it may be something we want to talk about, is how we get and support more effective exchange of people between the university and business sectors. I think we're pretty good at getting university folk into business. We're not so good at getting business folk coming in for periods of time into the university base. And many organisations have tried to do this, and we want to see if we can make that easier for the business community to engage with the universities more closely and co-work with them. And really just to say, when we're talking about connecting up the research landscape, a lot of that is coming under the commercialisation theme in UKRI, which EPSRC have oversight of. But just to say that impact acceleration counts are still very much part of the EPSRC portfolio, and we will be looking to expand those finances permitting. So let's just touch on promoting excellence in research and enhancing the business engagement. So promoting excellence in research, I'll touch on these 3 things. New Horizons call we identified. Now, you might say, well, isn't this just responsive mode? And at some level it is. But we're also conscious, and some of our theme leads within the organisation were as well, that there had almost become a little bit of groupthink. Everything we were funding, we're very happy is excellent. But in some areas, it was almost as if people felt if they positioned proposals in certain areas, they had a greater chance of success, even in responsive mode, which is 60% of the funds that we distribute. And so what we're considering, and we're going to be engaging with the community in terms of what this might look like, is to say this is manifestly something which we're not asking you to align with anything. We simply want the brightest and most innovative ideas that you have. And then we will run this pilot and see if the nature of the proposals we get in looks different from what we were getting in from responsive mode. So it's an experiment. Centres of excellence, you might think, oh, wearily, not more centres. I know there are some people who sort of go, no, centres, please, no. I shall call them Programme Grants Plus. Then you'll feel more comfortable. Okay? Centres of excellence sounds more excellent than Programme Grants Plus. What we're really wanting to do here is where we see a skill base in the UK, or where you feel you have a skill base, let's make sure we fund it at a level in which you can sustain excellence. And what we want to be able to do is work on capturing from you what those areas are, so when finances allow, or maybe there's a particular window of opportunity to ask for things of this nature, we have them ready, and we can get the funding for you to do this work. Okay? So that's what we're talking about with centres of excellence. And then the international impact, a second international centre-to-centre call will be made or launched. Right, now let's pick up on the enhancing business engagement. Some of you may have already be part of prosperity partnerships. These are something which Kedar Pandya drove within EPSRC. So it's one-to-one. The key characteristic here is one-to-one leveraging of the EPSRC money with the industrial money. So 66 million has been invested by EPSRC, leveraging about 90 million from predominantly business and some university money. And my take on this, all the feedback from it has been that these have been immensely successful, or are immensely successful activities. The company is defining the challenge, and it's very much about the company and the university working together in solving that challenge. Okay? And certainly we have a large number of these that sit in the really should be funded, but we didn't have enough money to fund them. So we want to grow this way of working, and we also want to make it more friendly to the SMEs, because a one-to-one financial match is difficult. So we're thinking about that. And we want to take this into new sectors, particularly creative industries and the service sector. And so this idea of more of challenge-driven research within the EPSRC portfolio, within the more strategic element of the portfolio, is certainly something we're interested in developing, because it seems to be something that is producing some very exciting science and engineering, and our partners are welcoming it. And so then let's just go to the foundations element of the portfolio, which is we don't have enough money to fund absolutely everything we want. So we do have to have an evidence base for where we position our funds. We're working very closely with STFC on trying to make sure that the infrastructure we get is fit for purpose for the universities. It's not all about campus facilities. Our universities have to have the best kit in them to do the research, and that's a really, really important message we have to make. The ED&I agenda I have addressed, as I have the interaction with the public. So, moving on to other aspects of what's going on within EPSRC, the place agenda is very big within UKRI, And the Strength in Places Fund, some of you may be engaging in that. The point about that is that, and this is run out of Research England, the proposals that go into that are all about developing social and economic prosperity in the region that is applying for the money. And that is the metric against which these are assessed. Of course, the research is going to be of very high quality and excellent. But the EPSRC specific approach here is that we still fund based on excellence during that peer review process. Okay? And of course, there is a very, very significant overlap between where Strength in Places would put its money and where we would put its money. To help us achieve and engage, get effective engagement with the regions, we have appointed 3 regional managers as a pilot for 2 years. So Derek, where is Derek? There's Derek. Derek looks after Scotland. Rachel Woolley looks after the Northwest, and Nick Cook looks after Wales. And what they're doing with these large regional clusters is undertaking horizon scanning activities, getting to know those communities so they feel engaged with EPSRC, because, you know, EPSRC, UKRI, it's London, it's Swindon. We want to make sure that that dialogue between the regions with EPSRC and UKRI, that two-way dialogue between us is as strong as possible. And the regional managers are doing a fantastic job in being what we call here positive disruptors in delivering that ambition. And then the reorganisation. Why did EPSRC reorganise? So all the councils of UKRI have reorganised according to a common structure. That actually makes a lot of sense, because then you have similar people, the structures being the same, it makes it easier to interact with one another. It's one thing having the executive chairs saying, there's a jolly good idea, but then somebody actually does the work. And if you operate in a similar way, it makes it easier. What we have done is we've created 3 directors within EPSRC, 3 additional directors. And so essentially what we're doing here is we've created 3 additional senior level roles. And that is important because I talked about getting approvals for NPIF allocations, for example. When you're dealing with Treasury and with BEIS, you need advocacy and presence of senior figures. And we were thin on those higher level positions within the organisation. We are a big funding agency, and we have to have people in those senior positions to have those discussions and to be able to represent me at the relevant meetings if I can't be in multiple places at once. And of course, we want to increase our ability to be able to talk science, to get out there and be talking to the community about what they're doing. So here is our new structure. Neil, who you know and love, is now a Deputy Executive Chair. We have just appointed, this is her 2nd week in the job, Charlotte Dean from Oxford, works in maths, statistics, and in particular the interface to biological and medical problems. So she's joined us as a part-time Deputy Exec Chair. And then we have our 3 directors. Jane Nicholson looks after the research base. Andrew Bourne, who's with us today, looks after partnerships, and Kedar Pandya looks after cross-council programs. So the logic here is, if we call them 3 directorates, you look at that, and I hope it tells you what EPSRC is committed to doing. We look after our research base, we're committed to cross-council activity, and we work in partnership. And so that's university, business, and international. And Andrew is with us today. So then if we just show you how that works, the names, obviously the names are important, but it's the structure of the thing. So there is some logic behind it. We just didn't create 3 green boxes. So if we look at the research base, we will then have 3 deputy directors working with Jane, and then the teams that you already work with. So nothing has changed when it comes to the team-based structure, except that we've created a materials team. So advanced materials, physical sciences, maths, building leadership, ED&I, ICT, engineering, and managing our portfolio, they sit within the research base. If we come to cross-council programmes, which KEDAR leads, quantum tech, energy and decarbonisation, circular economy, healthcare tech, digital, AI and robotics, research infrastructure and manufacturing for the future. To me, I look at those and I think that's putting the core skills of the research base together. It's logical. And of course, many of the cross-council activities derive in that sector, but not exclusively. So the directors work very, very closely together as a team in delivering all this. And then finally, Andrew looking after the business engagement and impact, the university's integrator and the regional managers, and the international piece. And all these slides will be available to you. Pretty much coming to the end now. Science, Engineering and Technology Board sits in the delivery plan. Hopefully, pretty much everybody here knows what Big Ideas is. So the Big Ideas Advisory Group, set up by Phil Nelson and Tom Rodden to start generating that back pocket full of ideas for funding opportunities. This has been going for a few years now. I think it was a very exciting group to be part of, but I did feel that it should now come into the natural governance of EPSRC and be transparent, manifestly transparent in the way it worked with terms of reference and rotating memberships. We've got the less snappy title now of Science, Engineering and Technology Board, or SETB. But essentially, if you come up with ideas now that you think, yeah, it's much, much bigger than me or my university can do, but why isn't EPSRC thinking big? Or why isn't it working in this area? You can put your ideas into the Science and Engineering and Technology Board, and then they can help you develop that idea if it's appropriate for ISCF or SPF funding, because we want to help you do this. So if you have an idea for SPF, we just don't say, yes, well, read the instructions and fill in the form. We will help you do that. So we want to keep your initial workload pretty low in terms until you know there's something really to go for in this space. So it's about working with you to help you achieve these funding sources, deliver these funding sources. Maybe it's a good idea for a centre of excellence. Maybe we say it's a great idea, but it sits slap bang in the middle of our portfolio anyway, so just put it into responsive mode. Maybe we say, yes, we do like it, but we're just going to park it, or it could go into GCRF. But it just helps you work at the one-page level and get advice on where to position some of these activities and how to build them up. Monitoring and evaluation, massively important. I mean, we all engage with Researchfish, and I do mean all. I do my Researchfish. I find emails in my inbox telling me to fill my Researchfish in, and otherwise I will be dead. So I'm in there with you on Researchfish, and that provides a huge amount of very useful data for us. It's invaluable. But UKRI now, because more money is coming into the science base, needs more and more information on what is being produced by you guys and its relevance. And one of the things that I think we often miss is the value of the people we generate. At a UKRI level, we certainly are beginning and thinking of ways we can work with BEIS to cost up economic impact of things. Because this is very, very difficult. I mean, we can do it, but it's got to be believed by government. And therefore, we are actually talking to government to say, come on, let's actually put the structures in place to help the UKRI community do these calculations in a way that will be well received, because we know we're doing good things. But it's also about, the softer things. When you've got good news stories, when you've got some impact, in the most general sense, let EPSRC know about it while the projects are ongoing, so that we can capture that and start conveying that back to the policymakers and, also the UKRI board. I want to have EPSRC Science and Engineering right in front of the noses of the UKRI board, and therefore we need that constant stream of success from you guys. So the key message there is help us to help you. So closing thoughts. I would simply like you to explore the opportunities that the formation of UKRI gives you. And just reiterating what I said a couple of minutes ago, if you have an idea, don't feel you've got to go away and write an 8-page application before you talk to us. Contact the relevant EPSRC team, and they will help you develop up ideas. Maybe it goes into Set B. Maybe, they can say, well, this, it looks like an obvious ISCF anyway, let's start working through it. Work with us to develop a steady pipeline of ideas in both discovery research and innovation. And it is about discovery research. It's not just about pulling through to building devices and the end game and the user base. Okay, we want your discovery research ideas. And also, if you are happy working directly with the EPSRC core allocation, so the smaller sums of money, the sort of 1 to 5 million typically, if your research sits in that space, that's fine. There is no need to change. But if you do think that you could benefit from some of these larger allocations, particularly in SPF or ISCF, start to think big and differently. So how can you make UKRI work for you? And in particular, where are the opportunities for working across councils? So I think that is the end. Yes, Mentimeter is before us. Thank you very much.